Our story begins by taking us back to ancient times. Legend has it that trolls emerged from the deepest parts of the mountains, formed from earth and rock, with bones made of ice and hearts as cold as snow. In those days, humans and these creatures lived together in peace and respect. Everything changed when a new religious order spread across Europe and arrived in Norway, brought by a young king named Olaf, who was on a mission to convert the entire country to Christianity. In this new belief, there was no place for beings as ancient as trolls. Therefore, Olaf forced them out of the safety of their dark forests and into the sunlight to turn them into stone. He attacked them without mercy, killing both adults and children to erase their presence from the earth. This is the story Tobias tells his young daughter, Nora, before she goes to sleep. However, the girl's mother interrupts the tale because she thinks such stories are too cruel. Even so, Tobias promises his daughter that one day he will take her to see the famous troll wall. 30 years after that promise, we see Nora living completely alone in a secluded cabin in the mountains. She has withdrawn from society after the hardships she endured in the past. Her peace ends when a hooded man tries to break into her house. She reacts in self-defense and attacks him, but soon realizes the intruder is Andreas, her old partner. Andreas explains that he sought her out because the government urgently needs her help with a national security issue. Although Nora initially refuses to return to that world, Andreas convinces her by showing her a book he wrote dedicated to her father, assuring her that Tobias would have loved what they found. The two travel by helicopter to the Vemork power plant. There they are greeted by Professors Muller and Vongel, who explain to Nora that the official history regarding World War II and the heavy water sabotage was just a lie to hide a much more important mission. Upon descending into the underground facilities, Nora is shocked to discover that the government has a new giant troll frozen on ice. They have codenamed it Jotun, though Andreas prefers to call it Megatroll. Marion, the project lead and an expert in biology, is also there and explains to Nora that they have been studying the troll for 2 years. She states that its DNA resembles that of a pine tree more than a human, and although it has a pulse, its insides seem to be made of forest soil. While they argue about what the creature is, and Nora insists they shouldn't treat it like an object, Andreas takes her to a room containing historical archives. There they meet Sigrid, who is now Andreas's partner and is pregnant with his child. In that room, they show Nora many ancient texts in various languages that speak of trolls. They include an original document signed by King Olaf in the year 1030, ordering the expulsion of all trolls from those lands. Andreas confesses to Nora that the research isn't progressing, and they fear that if another troll appears and gets out of control, they won't be able to face it. That is why they need her unique perspective to make progress before the government shuts down the project. Nora feels overwhelmed and asks to go to the bathroom to think, but she uses that moment to sneak into the restricted zone where the sleeping troll lies. Driven by curiosity and the memory of her father, she approaches the giant's face and begins to softly sing the same lullaby her mother used to sing to her. This triggers an immediate reaction on the monitors, tracking the giant's vital signs. The troll opens its eyes and awakes from its long slumber. This causes panic in the control room, where Professor Muller orders the ultraviolet lights turned on to turn it to stone immediately. However, Marion doesn't want to destroy such a valuable specimen, so she quickly spills her coffee on the control panel. This causes a short circuit and the security lights stop working. As the security system fails, chaos erupts in the facility, while the troll begins to use its brute force to break the chains holding it. Nora runs to the elevator to escape just as the creature violently strikes the structure. The elevator car falls to the bottom, but she manages to survive by holding on tightly. While everyone flees in desperation, the troll finishes breaking free and starts destroying everything. It crushes one of the scientists in its path. Nora, Andreas, Marion, and the other survivors have to flee outside just before the beast exits the mountain and enters the forest. After the disaster, the team heads to a military base where they meet Captain Christopher Holm, who has been promoted to major. Together, they attend an urgent meeting with the Prime Minister and the General of the Army. At the meeting, Marion insists they must capture the troll to study it for its scientific value, but Nora argues strongly that they cannot control a force of nature and will only cause more deaths if they try to dominate it. The Prime Minister recalls that his brother died in the previous troll attack, so he decides not to make the same mistakes. He orders the immediate elimination of the creature to protect the public and assigns the mission to Major Holm. Nora tries to convince Chris to let her go with them, reminding him that he owes it to the memory of her father, Tobias. Although he refuses at first because she is a civilian, he finally accepts, remembering that many people died last time for not listening to warnings. The team gears up in the hangar, where Chris shows them their new weapons, helicopters equipped with powerful UV spotlights called Zuna, specially designed to turn trolls into stone. Marion also joins the mission. Andreas, despite Sigrid begging him not to take the risk now that they are having a child, decides to board the helicopter. He promises to return safely and says he is only going to observe, like a supporting character. Meanwhile, at a ski resort full of partying people, the ground begins to shake violently, announcing the giant's arrival. The troll bursts in, destroying the roof and causing terror among the crowd. The troll begins to eat the people it finds, showing much more aggressive, predatory behavior than the previous troll. This horrifies Nora when they arrive at the scene in the helicopters. The military attacks by turning on the UV lights. They seem to hurt the beast, burning its skin and forcing it to retreat. But the troll reacts intelligently and rips out a cable car pylon to use as a weapon against the helicopters. In the middle of the aerial battle, the troll manages to hit the helicopter piloted by Amir, Chris's best friend. It severely damages the tail of the helicopter, causing it to lose control. Chris watches helplessly as his friend says goodbye over the radio before crashing into the ground in a massive explosion, leaving Chris devastated by the loss. With one helicopter destroyed and the lights damaged, the team is forced to retreat. The troll, seeing that it is no longer under attack, turns around and walks calmly away into the darkness. Chris is left shattered in front of the wreckage of his comrade's aircraft, while Nora and Marion discuss the strange nature of this monster, which doesn't seem to be acting solely in self-defense. Following the disaster at the ski resort, the team returns to the base, deeply affected by Amir's death and the failure of their technology against the beast. Marion argues that they must stop viewing these creatures as misunderstood beings and start seeing them as the dangerous monsters they are. But Nora insists that this troll's behavior is strange and that perhaps there is a way to communicate if they find the right intermediary. Remembering what happened years ago, Nora suggests returning to the Dover Mountains, to the same tunnel where it all began. She is convinced that there they could find an answer to stop the coming massacre. Upon arrival, the group heads deep into the cave until they find an ancient pit filled with stakes bearing Christian symbols, a deadly trap made centuries ago to kill trolls. Andreas looks at the remains of the site and comments that, according to legend, humans kidnapped a troll child to lure the Mountain King into that trap. They know the father survived and escaped 3 years ago, but they never found the remains of the little one. Nora follows her gut and begins to rhythmically bang rocks against the ground, calling out to the darkness in the hope that someone is listening. To everyone's surprise, a figure emerges from the shadows. It is that troll child who has survived hidden all this time and has grown significantly. The team is frightened upon seeing the creature, but Nora stays calm and approaches slowly, singing the familiar melody to soothe him. The troll responds well to her presence, proving to be much more noble and calm than the giant that attacked them in the snow. Nora invites Andreas to come closer and touch him, telling him not to think, but just to feel. They manage to establish a peaceful connection with the being, whom Nora decides to affectionately name Bello. Taking advantage of this connection, Nora explains to Bello that they urgently need his help because another of his kind, a very dangerous and angry one, threatens to destroy everything. However, there is no time, as the mega-troll, Jotun, approaches their location rapidly, attracted by the presence of the humans. Bello goes outside to face the intruder, unleashing a brutal fight between the two giants amidst the ice. Although Bello is brave, Jotun turns out to be much larger, stronger, and crueler, easily dominating the fight. At a critical moment, the giant strikes Bello with such force that it knocks him into the freezing waters of a nearby lake. The ice breaks and the creature disappears underwater. Chris sees that the situation is lost and that Jotun is now coming after them, so he forces Nora to get into the helicopter to escape. She is left heartbroken, believing that Bello drowned trying to protect them. Once safe in the air, Marion asks Nora how she managed to communicate with Bello. She answers that she simply learned to listen with her heart, something the scientists had not taken into account. As they analyze the Megatroll's movements on the map, Andreas notices something disturbing about its path. The beast isn't moving at random. Instead, it is following the exact ancient pilgrimage route leading to the city of Trondheim. Nora quickly connects the dots and realizes the troll is heading for Nidaros Cathedral. This is the place from which St. Olaf ruled and Christianized Norway. She deduces that the creature seeks revenge against the king, who attempted to exterminate his race 1,000 years ago. With this new intelligence, the team flies at full speed to Trondheim to arrive before the monster. Upon landing, they meet Esther, a historian expert in the life of St. Olaf and an old acquaintance of Nora's father. Esther leads them inside the impressive Nidaros Cathedral. She explains that she has dedicated her life to searching for the Saint King's lost tomb, which she believes is hidden somewhere in the tunnels beneath the building. The group descends into the underground passageways, where they find ancient wall paintings and symbols similar to those seen in the Troll Cave, confirming they are on the right track. While exploring a dead end in front of a stone relief, Andreas tries to examine one of the figures and accidentally breaks part of the sculpture. However, Esther notices that the damage reveals a hidden mechanism. Recalling the history of the battle where Olaf died, Esther points out that the king received 3 mortal wounds, one in the leg, one in the belly, and a final one in the neck. Following this clue, Nora and the others insert torches into the holes corresponding to those wounds on the stone. This activates an ancient gear system that opens a secret door to a hidden chamber sealed for centuries. Crossing the threshold into the subterranean tomb, they discover an untouched sanctuary. There lies the perfectly preserved body of St. Olaf, resting on a stone table and surrounded by the waters of a spring flowing underground. Beside the king, they find his famous sword, named Basim. It is in pristine condition and shines brightly because it is forged from pure silver, a detail that catches Chris's attention. But the most important find is not the treasure or the king's body, but a very ancient scroll Andreas discovers among Olaf's personal effects. Using Sigurd's scanning technology, they managed to piece this fragment together with the torn document they had stored at the base. Thus, they finally uncover the full truth about the history they thought they knew. What the text says is surprising and changes everything. Olaf did not actually hate the trolls, nor did he want to kill them all. Quite the opposite. The king had realized that these creatures were the most essential part of the land's nature. His plan was to give them a sanctuary in the mountains of Jotunheim so they could live in peace and tranquility. The story everyone knew was a lie fabricated by the church and the king's own people. They betrayed and killed Olaf precisely because he refused to continue the massacre of the trolls. Nora then realizes, with great horror, that the Megatroll's fury is not directed at Olaf. Its hatred is against human civilization and the church, because they broke the sacred agreement and killed the only man who tried to protect them. This news hits the group like a bucket of ice water. They realize there is no way to talk to or reason with a creature driven by 1,000-year-old betrayal and such deep pain. At the same time, news reports warn that the Megatroll is already at the city gates, causing panic and destroying everything in its path. The government orders everyone to evacuate Trondheim immediately. They demand Chris and his team leave now, but the team knows that if the troll reaches the cathedral, it will destroy the heart of the city and everything else it encounters. Andreas calls Sigrid to tell her he cannot leave. He feels it is his responsibility to protect their child's future and finish what they started. Nora and Chris support this decision and choose to stay and face the beast with the few resources they have at hand. Determined not to abandon the city, the group begins organizing the final defense in the cathedral square, knowing full well that conventional bullets will not stop the giant. Remembering that Olaf's silver sword was spotless, Chris comments that silver is too soft for weapons, but has the quality of not rusting and resisting water. Nora thinks quickly and suggests that perhaps the secret isn't the metal itself, but the water from Olaf's spring that the sword has been touching for centuries. To test her theory, Nora dips her knife into the holy water. Although unsure at first, they decide to trust that this liquid is the element that can damage the troll's internal system. Lacking sufficient personnel, Chris and Marion put the remaining soldiers and civilians to work. Everyone helps gather as much water as possible from the underground spring, filling barrels and preparing special ammunition for the imminent fight. As they finish preparations, Andreas asks Nora if she has faith. She confesses that when her mother died, she tried to believe with all her might but received no answer. So she feels faith cannot be forced. But Andreas assures her that he has faith in her, even if their plans seem crazy. This strengthens the bond between them before the battle. The conversation is cut short when sensors warn that the target has arrived in the zone. Soon the ground begins to shake as the Megatroll approaches, entering the city ready to destroy everything representing Olaf's legacy. The plan begins when the beast nears the cathedral. Chris gives the signal, and Andreas, along with Esther, starts ringing the church bells with all their might. The loud, high-pitched sound stuns the troll, causing visible pain. The giant is forced to stop and cover its ears, giving the soldiers a chance to fire with their modified arsenal. But the creature recovers quickly from the initial surprise. In a fit of rage, it rips a massive tree from the ground and violently hurls it at the bell tower, destroying the structure and silencing the bells. Andreas and Esther manage to emerge from the rubble just in time, but the main containment plan has failed and the monster advances toward them unhindered. Seeing they cannot stop it with brute force, Chris orders a retreat to the second line of defense, where they have set the trap with the barrels of holy water. When the troll steps into the designated zone, Chris detonates the hidden bombs, unleashing a massive explosion of water that engulfs the giant. The sacred liquid burns the beast's skin like acid, making it roar in agony and fall to the ground, giving the team a moment of hope that they have managed to defeat it. However, the victory is short-lived. The troll's internal fire seems to heal the damage, and slowly the creature rises again, angrier than before and ready to finish everyone off. Just as the Megatroll prepares to crush the defenseless humans, a familiar roar is heard in the square. To everyone's surprise, Bello appears from the shadows, revealing he survived the fall into the frozen lake and has come to protect them. Bello bravely throws himself at the giant, initiating a brutal fight between the two beasts amidst the city ruins. Despite his courage, the difference in size and strength is evident. The Megatroll dominates the fight and begins to choke Bello, pinning him to the ground with the intent to kill him once and for all. Nora, desperate to save her friend, tries to distract the giant by shooting at it with what she has left, but her efforts are useless against the monster's impenetrable skin. Marion then realizes that the troll's only real weakness is its interior, as it has a heart and a biological system pumping energy. She suggests that if they can get a large enough water bomb directly into its organism, they could destroy it from the inside out. Andreas remembers they have one last prepared water barrel left and proposes using the helicopter to drop it into the beast's mouth. Chris runs to pilot the helicopter while Andreas loads the heavy barrel with help from the others. But amidst the chaos and haste, the remote detonator falls and shatters, rendering the explosive charge useless from a distance. Faced with this critical situation, Andreas realizes the only way to detonate the barrel is manually, using a grenade to trigger the reaction at the exact moment. This means someone must jump with the bomb to ensure it enters the troll's mouth. It is a suicide mission from which there is no return. Without a second thought, Andreas decides to assume the responsibility to save his family in the city. As the helicopter ascends, he makes one last video call to Sigrid. With a breaking voice, he says goodbye, quoting a phrase about sacrifice. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. He tries to leave a message for his unborn son, but the signal cuts out before he can finish. The helicopter hovers over the Megatroll, which roars at the sky with jaws wide open, preparing to attack the aircraft. Andreas looks at Chris one last time and jumps into the void, hugging the barrel. He falls straight into the monster's throat, disappearing into its guts seconds before a muffled explosion shakes the giant's body from within. The Megatroll staggers, glowing with an internal light as its organism collapses until finally falling defeated. Bello, seizing the moment, stands up and in a final act of victory, rips out his enemy's heart, ensuring the threat is gone forever. Silence covers the square as the survivors process what happened. Nora and Chris mourn Andreas' death, recognizing his heroism and the supreme sacrifice he made for them all. After some time, life begins to flourish again in Norway. We see images of the city being rebuilt and the team reunited in peace. Nora, Chris, and Marion visit Sigrid, who has already given birth to her baby, fulfilling the promise that life continues even after tragedy. Bello has also found his place in the world. He lives in the nearby mountains under the group's protection, and they finally accept him as part of their strange family. The movie ends with a reflection from Nora on hope and the importance of finding one's way back home, a place where one can feel free. However, in a final scene during the credits, we are transported back to the underground laboratory where it all began. Professor Mueller speaks on the phone with the general. He informs him with enthusiasm that the specimen he managed to save from the lab before its destruction has begun to develop. The camera shows a glass container where a small creature is moving. This reveals that the story of the trolls may not be entirely over, and that the cycle could repeat itself once more.